After our wedding, John suddenly canceled our wedding party, blaming work. I felt uneasy and then received a call from Iris. She told me John's name was on the list of clients getting married that day. Suspicious, I hurried over and was shocked to find John exchanging vows with a stranger in the chapel. They moved to the main building for the reception. I overheard their conversation through a slightly open door in the waiting room. Gosh, was it okay to cancel on Emily with her showing off like that? The old hag would have ruined our day with her crowd. Come on, John, you married her for love, right? No chance, she's just a tasteless bumpkin. The only one I love is Isabella. Enraged, I immediately called my father. Soon after, he and our relatives arrived, and we stormed into the reception. Hurry up, it's already started. Brace yourselves. I'm about to turn your world upside down. I'm Emily A., aged 42. Recently married to John. I balance full-time work with managing our household. Losing my mother to illness at a young age meant my father, who runs a real estate business, raised me with loving care. Adored by relatives, I graduated college and moved to the city to live independently, though our family home remains just an hour away, making weekend visits effortless. I wanted to marry to ease my father's mind, now in his 60s. That's when I met John, who had come from headquarters to assist with work. A local, John exuded style and sophistication. He was adept in his role, enjoyable to converse with, and soon expressed his desire. I want to date you with marriage in mind. We began our courtship, and when he proposed, I happily accepted his ring. When I shared the news with my father over the phone, he was elated and plans were made for John to meet him. Welcome. You're as impressive as my daughter, my father greeted John warmly, and they hit it off, bonding over sports. I was relieved and happy to see them get along so well. However, on the drive back to the city, John's words caught me off guard as he glanced out the window. There's really nothing around here. Hard to believe you lived in such a place. His comment left me momentarily speechless. Yes, it's mostly fruit orchards and homes around here. It's a quiet contrast to the city where you grew up, I replied, trying to keep the peace despite my discomfort. But it's so quiet and boring, John continued in a mocking tone. And that house of yours? It's so big for no reason, all on one level, giving off a real country vibe. Back in the city, we have compact yards and parking spaces. Much more efficient. I envy it. Being from the city just makes life better. I felt unsettled by his remarks but chose not to start an argument so early in our marriage. Just typical city dweller thoughts, I reassured myself, attempting to suppress my frustration. A month later, we were invited to John's parents' stylish 3-story house tucked in a densely packed corner of the city. His parents, equally stylish, exuded a cold demeanor that matched their home. I felt uncomfortable under their scrutinizing gaze, particularly when John's mother made pointed remarks about my appearance and upbringing. So your mother passed away from illness. No parents together then. Well, it's better than being divorced, she remarked, an outdated notion that irked me. Would you have objected to our marriage if my parents were divorced? I questioned, displeased by her attitude. Emily comes from a very rural area, but she's a big landowner. Her father runs a real estate company, John interjected, prompting my in-laws to lean in with interest. Almost the entire neighborhood belongs to Emily's family. How impressive, they exchanged smirks. Take good care of John, Emily. I responded with a polite yet strained smile. On the drive home, John gripped the steering wheel, his demeanor proud. My dad manages a big company, M Motors, at their headquarters, and Mom is a homemaker. No need for her to work outside, he boasted. Very impressive, I murmured, though I was disappointed by John's attitude towards my family's achievements. He seemed childish at times, but my feelings for him remained strong. After dinner with both families, we began planning our wedding. Options ranged from a chapel to a garden at a prestigious hotel, each offering an elegant venue. Struggling to decide, I took my time researching and seeking advice from friends. When I finally leaned towards a garden and discussed it with John, he vehemently opposed the idea. I want the ceremony in a chapel and the reception in the main building, John declared suddenly. But you said you'd leave it all up to me, I reminded him. Well, I changed my mind after talking to some friends, John replied hesitantly, showing a promotional video on his phone. Look at this place, isn't it great? He asked, showing me a hall adorned with colorful flowers and smiling couples. It is lovely, I agreed. Great, it's settled then. Let's go with this one, John decided, quickly arranging a viewing at the venue. During our visit, John surprised me by showing earnest interest in the details of the ceremony and reception, asking staff numerous questions. It warmed my heart to see his enthusiasm, as he typically showed little interest in such events. However, his excitement waned as we continued planning. When it came time to choose the dress, wedding rings, and finalize party details, John began dragging his feet, blaming his busy work schedule. "Choose the dress you like, Emily. Everything looks good on you," he said indifferently. "It's not just about that, John. I want you to be involved. You always have great taste," I pleaded. "Thanks, but I want to be surprised on the day," John replied. "It's normal for husbands to be involved in these decisions," I insisted. John grew annoyed. "I can't help it. I have business trips on weekends. Take it up with my boss, not me," he snapped, his mood soaring whenever I brought up his busy schedule. "I've already sorted the guest list and sent out the invites. Isn't that enough? I ordered the rings we saw on my phone. We'll pick them up soon," John said, his words sounding obligatory, which saddened me, but I chose not to argue further. "Just make sure you come to the next meeting. We need to choose gifts for the guests together," I insisted. I know. I'll definitely be there next time," John replied grudgingly, his face clouded with irritation. I grew anxious as he often broke his promises. On the day of our meeting, he said he'd come after work, but he was nowhere to be seen. My calls went unanswered, my messages unread. 15 minutes past our appointment time, and still no sign of him. I apologized to the staff member. "I'm sorry, I can't reach my husband, so please proceed with the meeting," I explained to the female staff. "All right, you're Emily, right?" the staff member timidly confirmed. "Yes, that's me," I confirmed. "Do you remember me? I'm John's cousin Iris. We met at the party, remember?" Iris asked with a smile. "Oh, Iris, I remember now," I exclaimed. We arrived at the party early, but John left me feeling uncomfortable among strangers and went off to chat with his cousins. Then you approached me with a smile. "Yes, that's right. I work here," Iris confirmed. "I'm so glad you're having your ceremony with us," Iris said, friendly smile suddenly. "Is John really that busy with work? It wasn't like this when we were dating. Work is important, but I wish he'd prioritize our relationship more," I confided to Iris in a hushed tone. "It's a big event, after all. I'll definitely talk to him about it next time I see him." "Hang in there," Iris reassured me, clenching her fists in support. I felt somewhat comforted by her words. When I arrived home, John was lounging on the sofa, engrossed in his phone. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" I asked, my frustration bubbling over as I stood in front of him. John finally glanced up. "Sorry, I was supposed to finish early this morning, but it turned into overtime," he replied casually. "Then at least let me know. Besides, it's not a busy season at work, is it?" I pressed, feeling hurt. John bristled at my question. "My department at headquarters is busy, unlike where you work. A small town girl like you wouldn't understand. Where I come from has nothing to do with it. Honestly, maybe we shouldn't even have a party. It's just too much of a hassle," I snapped, feeling crestfallen. It seemed John didn't share my enthusiasm for our wedding celebration, our first step towards our future together. "Fine, I'll take care of everything from now on. Just don't complain," I declared, feeling a mix of disappointment and determination. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I retorted, "Can I really make it work with John?" He looked taken aback by my sudden outburst. "I'm sorry, I went too far. I'm just exhausted from work and all the preparations. I promise I'll be at the remaining meetings," John hurriedly assured me, seeming panicked. "Can I trust you?" I asked tearfully. "Yes, if work comes up, I'll reschedule or have someone cover for me," he promised earnestly. True to his word, John attended the remaining meetings with me. However, a month before the wedding party, an unsettling event occurred. John suddenly wanted to postpone the event, citing work reasons. "Sorry, there was a product defect due to a subordinate's mistake. I have to go on a business trip to a branch office that day," John explained. I couldn't hold back my anger. "Can't someone else handle it? It feels unfair that I have to bear the brunt of your subordinate's mistake." "I understand, but I have to apologize in person. It's part of my responsibility," John replied. Resigned, I asked, "How long will it be postponed?" "Until everything settles down. Once things calm down, we'll reschedule. I'll explain everything to the guests," John assured me. I held back my frustration. I just wish our wedding party was a priority. Okay, I'll do my best, John sighed, and we reluctantly agreed. The day before our original reservation, John left on his business trip as planned. As I was preparing to leave, my phone rang. It was Iris. What she told me left me shocked. What? I'll see it for myself, I replied, rushing to the venue. At the entrance of the main building, I checked the list of couples getting married. My heart sank. It was true. Under John's name was another woman's, unfamiliar to me. Today was supposed to be the eve of our wedding party, and feeling dizzy with disbelief, I headed towards the chapel on the north side of the main building. Pushing open the heavy doors, I was struck with disbelief. There stood John in a white tuxedo, facing a woman in a wedding dress, exchanging vows with a pastor. As he lifted her veil for a kiss, I felt like my world was collapsing. Watching the supposedly happy couple, a mix of shock and fury surged within me. All his excuses about work, all the postponed meetings, they were all for her. I followed behind the guests, heading towards the main building, unable to contain my anger, waiting for an opportunity to confront John. As a staff member exited a room, I decided to barge in. Quietly, I placed my phone near the slightly open door, discreetly recording their conversation. A younger bride is definitely better, man. I wonder if it was okay to cancel the party with Emily parading around like that. The old hag would probably get us booed by the guests. John's voice sneered. John, that's awful. Didn't you marry her because you loved her? Isabella protested. No way. She's just a tasteless country girl, practically a charity case. The only one I love is you, Isabella, John replied callously. Their laughter echoed through the hallway. Feeling my rage, I clenched my fists so tightly they felt like they might break. Their words were unforgivable. Gathering myself in a corner of the hallway, I managed to calm down. Coincidentally, my father and relatives were nearby. I swiftly sent the recording of John and Isabella's conversation to my father, witnessing his furious reaction. I also shared it with someone else who couldn't hide their shock. As I made these arrangements, the noise from the reception hall grew louder. It was about to start. Ending my calls, I headed towards the reception hall. After a brief wait, my father arrived as promised, accompanied by a large group of relatives. We exchanged nods and pushed open the doors to the reception hall together. Here's to the future of the couple and the prosperity of both families. Cheers, cheers. The lively mood filled the venue as I stormed in with my father and relatives. We're in a hurry. It's already started, I announced firmly to the confused attendees. Wait, what's going on? Murmured the crowd in confusion. Excuse me, who are you? You're not on the guest list. Could you please leave? The puzzled MC asked me. I smiled calmly at the MC. Who am I? I'm John's wife. John and Isabella froze on stage, clearly unprepared to see me. They hadn't informed anyone that John was already married. How peculiar. Why is my husband marrying another woman? Are you John's mistress? I addressed Isabella with a sharp gaze. My husband has always taken good care of you. Since you're not surprised to see me, you knew he was married, right? So, you're an accomplice. I continued, maintaining my composure. No, this is, John began, but fell silent with a bitter expression while Isabella stammered amidst the murmuring crowd. What's happening? John isn't single? Voices rose in disbelief from the guests. Bigamy is not acceptable. This is absurd. I'm leaving, one guest exclaimed, followed by others voicing their discontent. Hey, everyone, please come back. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving too, the MC declared, setting down the microphone in disappointment. Even the MC left, abandoning the stage with other guests, leaving John alone with my father and relatives in the venue. Emily, you've ruined a perfectly good party. What are you going to do about it? John confronted me, visibly angry. Suppressing the anger in the room, I addressed John firmly. So, John, you had the means to plan another wedding. Isabella looked at me scornfully. What are you talking about? John's a manager. He earns a lot, don't you know that? She turned to John with a mocking smile. John, you went all out planning a lovely surprise for me, didn't you? The hotel room for tonight is a top-floor suite. Oh, joy. John avoided Isabella's gaze guiltily. I chuckled softly and addressed Isabella. Oh, you didn't know. He's drowning in debt. I accidentally opened the credit card bill the other day, and the amount due on the revolving credit was shockingly high. I revealed to Isabella. Isabella stared at John in disbelief while John grimaced and turned away from her. He earns a lot, but he spends more than he earns on clothes, bags, watches, always buying the latest high-end brands. He's just a show-off, I continued, showing Isabella the copy of the prepared credit card statement. Isabella paled. No way. I had no idea about this, really. Even as his mistress, you didn't know, I retorted, and Isabella clicked her tongue, glaring at John. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. I have a repayment plan. I won't let Isabella suffer, John interjected defensively. I was planning to divorce Emily after making her pay off my debts and then remarry Isabella. I never intended to have a wedding party with you, John lashed out at me. I married a girl like you for money, but I regret it now. Just living with you makes me feel like a bumpkin. So, are you going to pay off my debts, wife? John sneered. I won't. I dismissed the idea firmly, while Isabella turned to John in a coquettish tone. John, did you finalize the contract for the condo we're moving into? The view from the 30th floor must be amazing. Do you remember our plan to live together after our honeymoon in Europe? I sighed, looking between Isabella and John. John avoided Isabella's gaze guiltily, clearly uncomfortable. It seems like you haven't even signed the contract for the condo yet, I pointed out. And what about the excuse of all the rooms being booked to delay moving in together? Isabella added, eyeing John skeptically. Do you even have the money, or are you planning to make Isabella pay and never reimburse her? That's not true. I do plan to pay eventually, John insisted. Eventually, huh? Isabella's eyes narrowed. Well, it's fine. I don't mind if you don't pay me back right away. I'm not in dire straits. Yeah, right. Isabella comes from a wealthy family, so she's got plenty of cushion. I chuckled involuntarily, which annoyed John. Why are you laughing? He demanded. John, you assumed Isabella was from a wealthy background, didn't you? Maybe she does have money to spare, especially if her husband works abroad, I explained with a hint of sarcasm. John's eyes widened in realization. Wait, Isabella has a husband, but she told me she was divorced and single now. Isabella avoided John's gaze without responding. I reached into my bag and pulled out documents and photos, which I then presented to John. After you canceled our wedding party, I hired a private investigator to look into your affairs. What? Don't take matters into your own hands like that. I snapped back, glaring at John, who fell silent, clearly displeased. I was considering forgiving you, depending on your behavior, but I never expected you to go as far as having a wedding with your mistress, I added sharply, casting a pointed glance at Isabella. I had Isabella investigated too, and look at what I found. This man in the photo, would you call him her brother or friend? I held up a picture where Isabella smiled affectionately at a tall, handsome man in front of an elegant mansion. The man had a suitcase at his feet, as if preparing for a business trip. The next photo showed him behind the wheel of a car, with Isabella stepping out of what appeared to be their home's garage. The third photo was even more telling. Isabella strolling down a beautifully lit street, hand in hand with the man, both looking cheerful. John's eyes bulged as he trembled, clearly shaken by the photos. Isabella, who is this guy? John demanded, his voice tense. He's my cousin's brother, Isabella replied calmly. You don't have any male cousins. Did I not mention that, Isabella? Yes, that's my husband. Handsome, isn't he? Isabella continued proudly, ignoring John's shock. My husband is always traveling for work and I get bored. So I thought I'd have a bit of fun with this moderately good-looking man. Moderately, I interjected. Yes, in person, he's as handsome as a movie star. I can't be seen with unattractive men. They have to compliment me, Isabella explained with a dismissive wave of her hand. John was visibly stunned, but Isabella carried on talking, seemingly unconcerned with his reaction. Then John entered. I was okay with my standards. Are you going to marry me after my divorce? John looked like he was going to cry. What? No way. John's company is famous domestically, but it's nothing compared to international companies. John's salary is half of my husband's. It's like a dream, right? Isabella laughed condescendingly. I just went along today because John wanted to play wedding. Play wedding? I was serious about it. As a married man, that's ridiculous. Isabella sharply dismissed him. The wedding at my in-laws was in a traditional family with a modest ceremony, and it was boring. Then John here suggested a chapel wedding, so I went along. It was fun, like filming a drama. After a satisfied smile, Isabella pouted. It felt great being like a heroine, but having it ruined by a wife is so lame. I'm bored now. Let's break up. Wait, Isabella. Don't contact me anymore. Bye. John, on the verge of tears, was left behind as Isabella swirled the skirt of her dress and left the venue. My father and relatives looked at John, kneeling and devastated on the stage, with disdain. What a disgraceful man, canceling a wedding party with his wife to marry another woman. I've never heard of such a thing, such dishonesty, hurting Emily, this liar. Even as John faced a barrage of criticism from my relatives, he showed no sign of remorse. Instead, he glared at me, my father, and relatives, and yelled, "Shut up, Emily. Did you have your dad and relatives wait nearby just to make a fool of me? You're twisted. Today is my mother's death anniversary. That's why the relatives were together. We had a meal at a nearby restaurant." Gideon looked bewildered. "I told you the other day, remember?" "Oh, did I hear that? You were too preoccupied with Isabella. You must have forgotten." John fell silent, with a sulky face, as I shot a sarcastic remark at him. "I was supposed to attend the memorial too. I was getting ready to leave when your cousin Iris, who works here, told me someone with same name as you was getting married today." "Iris? She works here?" "Yes, so a happy undertan now. Achieved department manager." The department manager looked confused upon seeing John and me. "Emily informed me about John's wedding party, so I hurried over with my colleagues." "What's going on here?" he asked, trying to make sense of the situation. "Well, you see, John's wedding party was supposed to be postponed, and no new date had been set," I explained. The department manager's colleagues frowned, and a younger man in the back nodded in agreement. "We were told it was due to Emily's circumstances, so we assumed it was still on hold." "Was I mistaken?" the department manager asked, his tone serious. "Yes, there was a misunderstanding about the date. It turns out it's today, so we rushed over here," I clarified, feeling apologetic for the confusion caused. "I apologize for the sudden call and any inconvenience," I added, addressing the manager and his colleagues. "There won't be a wedding party with this man anymore." "Of course not," John retorted sharply. "Marrying someone like you was a mistake. You've humiliated me." "The feeling's mutual, John," I shot back, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. The department manager turned sternly towards John. "You've not only disgraced yourself, but also disappointed me as your mentor." "What? I didn't mean to." John stuttered, realizing the severity of the situation. "You were talented and respected by your colleagues. I had high hopes for you, but this is a huge letdown," the department manager stated coldly. "I will report this to the president. Forget about any promotions." John's casual remark about his affair earned him disgusted looks from his younger colleagues. "Marrying your mistress is not acceptable, John," one of them commented firmly. "That's who you really are," another added, shaking his head in disbelief. "The team leader position will have to be reassigned now," the department manager concluded, his disappointment palpable. "We'll need to find someone else for the role." With that, the department manager and his colleagues left, leaving John to contemplate the consequences of his actions in stunned silence. "Am I going to be taken off the project?" "No way." John collapsed on the stage, tears streaming down his face while my relatives voiced their disappointment. "You get what you deserve. I thought you were serious about your work, even if you looked down on Emily and me as country folk." "I was mistaken," my usually gentle father scolded John, who hung his head in shame. The following day at work, John seemed like a person walking on eggshells. News of his affair, planned divorce, and deceit spread like wildfire throughout the company and reached our clients. Once a top performer in his department, John quickly lost the trust of his superiors, colleagues, and clients, derailing his career path in an instant. Unable to withstand the disdainful looks from everyone, John resigned from the company before being transferred to a regional branch. His grand plan to deceive me into paying off his debts, then divorcing me to marry Isabella, fell apart disastrously. Deeply distraught, John sought solace at his parents' home, only to face their furious disapproval upon learning the truth from Iris. "What a disgraceful thing you've done. We're being shamed by all our relatives. Marrying your mistress is not the act of a sane person. We're cutting ties with you. Don't let her contact us again." John was disowned by his own family. Left with massive debts from his lavish spending, cancellation fees for our wedding, compensation to the venue, and alimony to me, John struggled to make lump sum repayments. Despite his career experience, he was rejected from full-time positions due to his tarnished reputation and age, settling for multiple part-time jobs. Days blurred into long hours, leaving him gaunt, with stubble and noticeable white hair, barely recognizable when I last saw him on the street. Isabella, caught cheating by her husband, suffered her own consequences. Divorced and evicted from the condo, she now works tirelessly to make ends meet. Initially blaming myself for the failed marriage, within a year, my colleagues' unwavering support helped me regain my focus on work. Entrusted with training new employees and selected for project development, I advanced my career and now lead a fulfilling life. Ironically, Iris and I became close friends through this ordeal. We enjoy occasional coffee dates and trips, finding solace and joy in each other's company. Ending a marriage to a man of constant deception was the right decision. I've resolved to cultivate better judgment, not to be deceived by appearances or charm, and to continue growing personally.